Warning to everyone, this is going to set some people off and it's not suitable for small children. I'm going to show you a trainer that's in China and what he's doing with a border collie. And I'm going to break that down here. And then Robert's going to talk about a famous movie that may have ended the Western. So stick around for that because both of these things are things that need to be exposed.
Some say these two trainers were quietly in the shadows. Robert Weatherwax, last of the legendary Lassie Trainers from the world's most famous dog training family, was quietly hidden in his TV work. And Christophe Clugston, Jedi Dog Master, was traveling from the sub-zero Arctic to the sweltering jungle heat training dogs on 3 continents. But a chance meeting changed all of that. Now Robert and Christophe have joined forces, and they're breaking the silence. For the first time, the secretive and hidden world of the movie dog trainer and the science of the elite tactical trainer will be revealed. That's right, finally, they're out of the shadows.
I'm warning you, when you're looking at the video that I will be putting up, may have a violent reaction to it. You see here, as I go through this, is a guy who is having a group dog obedience training session, and he has a border collie. Now, I do not know why he was upset with the border collie, but he's clearly upset with border collie. Now, you got to remember that Robert and I consider a border collie one of the easiest dogs in the entire world to train. They have been bred to be responsive to humans. They can do amazing things, and that's why you find so many people with agility and trick training and even some movie trainers using border collies because it makes life easy. It's not difficult. They are easy dogs to train. It's not like my American Bulldog. These are on the other end of the spectrum. Now, that being said, this guy is taking the end of the leash. It looks to me like it is a leather leash. And he is whacking the border collie on the nose repeatedly. And you see this, and we don't know the reason why. I think it's because, look, I lived in the Orient. Yeah, people, and it's called the Orient. Just like it's called the Occidental world here, that's the Oriental world there. Because Asia is over 43 countries, and I bet you none of you, without trying to look it up, can name half of the countries in Asia. So it's the Orient, and I know that mindset. And that mindset, from the teaching point of view, is I'm the master. You will do what I say. This is for the classroom too. You don't question me. You don't bring anything up because I have an infantile ego and I will respond badly and I will do something to punitively to you. And I'm talking about the kids and the universities. It's not the Socratic method like it is here in the Occidental world, which we uphold. So there's this whole cultural thing going on. The guy is teaching this class supposedly, and what he's going to do is what it's kind of like Jack London would talk about in The Call of the Wild and some of his other books, and what Lee Duncan and some other trainers from that time period would call fear training. He is going to beat the dog into submission. For what reason? We don't know, other than he wants to just, and now this really is what people, when they say they dominate the dog, this is beyond that. He is hitting the dog with the leash. And then the dog, something we didn't bring up in our video about the movie and the river crossing thing. The guy was lucky when he did trying to dunk the German Shepherd into the water, that the dog, out of fear, did not try to retaliate. That's something I meant to bring up. That is a pretty big chance of that happening because it's defensive, just like you are going to try to fight back. Do you want to be kidnapped or do you want to be shoved into something without putting up a fight? No, that's natural for you to fight back. So it's strange that the German Shepherd did not fight back. The Border Collie begins to do that. And you can see, those of you who know dogs, have seen dogs, you'll see what some people call the whale eye. The eyes get really big and you can see the whites of the eyes. And the dog is barking and growling. So that really sets this guy off at that point, because now he's caused that. This guy has created that. He has taken a dog that is very, very easy to work with, beat this dog with the end of the leash. Now the dog doesn't want to put up with it anymore. So what he does is he tries to start slinging the dog around. The dog is on a choke chain. And he's also choking the dog, lifting the dog off the ground, and keeping the dog off the ground. Now, this is all abuse. And you can put in the comments below if you think this guy deserves a lengthy prison sentence, or does he need to be Epstein when he's in his cell too? You can put in all those things in the comments. But he has created this problem. He's slinging the dog around, choking the dog. And when he stops doing that, he's hitting the dog again with the end of the leash. Then, for no reason, when the dog is cowering, and then there's no other way to describe it, he's whacking the dog with his open hand and telling him no, no, and then grabbing the dog by the lips and pulling up and trying to inflict pain on the dog to demonstrate that no matter what he does, he can do whatever he wants to the dog. Now, this is a slave relationship. This is a really horrible. This is the Genghis Khan with the slaves. I mean, this is just insanity on the level of this. There's no reason for this, and he's whacking the dog, and he's actually saying in English, "Quit, no." I don't know why he's using English here and there. You can tell it's his second, third language, though. Anyway. He's doing this, and the people around him, you can hear on the audio. I don't know if I will include the audio, but I will include a link to the original video so you can watch it with the audio, because I gotta, for our purposes, I can't really put the audio on too. I'll put the visual. Anyway, so he's doing this. He's beaten the dog with the leash. He's slung the dog around. Now he's whacking the dog with his hands, and the dog is cowering on the ground, like getting into a down, which I think is what he wanted to do originally. Because now he's acting like, look, and the people are, wow, yeah. And the dogs that are there, you can take a look at them. None of these dogs are difficult dogs. Some of them might be a little bit hyper to deal with, but these are the type of pet dogs that Robert works with all the time. This guy, I'm trying to divorce the emotions from the critique. Looking at this guy, this is a border collie. This guy will never be able to train a dog to do any of the things that you see that Robert's done on film or that you see me doing. You cannot do this. And I wish if you try that with my super dog, my Dutch Shepherd, he would kill that guy. He would kill that guy. And that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to fight back and protect himself. If you try to abuse a dog like that, and my bulldog, he won't let another person touch him. But if you try to do that, my bulldog, you'll be dead. You would be dead. And that's the sort of stupidity that leads to scenes like that. You start out, you want to, instead of working with the dog and understanding the dog, and as Robert would say, the psychology of the dog, if you don't do those things, and then you want to come out there and dominate the dog, and I mean really dominate the dog, and then the dog reacts, then this idiot is left with, no, I'm going to show the dog that I really am. I am the mafia boss here. And so he's slapping the dog around. He's slapping, you can see it. And this leaves you nowhere. But this guy, you can get some obedience out of fear, as it was called, fear training, like Jack London, like I said before, with a leash on. This dog is never going to do a recall. All these people who want to talk about, whoa, yeah, I could do a recall if I use tools. I'm not using any tools for a quarter mile. I'm using one to signal the dog, morons. That's it. I'm signaling the dog. There's no tools. The dog can go anywhere he wants to. He doesn't have to stay in a stay, quarter mile away from me. So you'll never get that. What is what I'm saying. With that type of training, that type of thing, you'll only get forced obedience with a leash on. Never, ever will you be able to do any of the things that you see that Robert and I do. Really, we're here to inspire people and show what's possible. I'm doing things that other people cannot do. We'll have soon another video with the 120-pound dog, Kuma, the famous American bulldog, the monster bulldog, doing things that you would see other dogs doing in some films. And it's like, well, that's not that. It is very difficult to get a dog like that to do it. And I will talk about it in the video. But anyway, I just bring that up because sometimes Robert and I make things look too easy. And everyone thinks, well, that's no big deal. Okay, then why is nobody else doing it? Anyway, so I want you to put in the comments below what you would do if you were there. Would you do anything? Because a lot of people, these are just spectators, the bystander thing, but they're, like I'm saying, it's the Orient. So they view this guy as the master, the guru, the guy who knows all. So they're not going to interrupt anything. They're just going to ooh and ah and watch him. This is a rough but necessary episode, and Robert, take it away.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of trainers too. I don't know how old this guy was. But I would say that a lot of younger trainers, less experienced trainers, tend to take things personal. Like if they hear a growl from a dog, or if they posture or something, they show some kind of sign of rejecting what they want the dog to do, and then they tend to take that as a personal affront. I've done that. I've been in this situation a lot when I go to people's homes and the dogs don't like me. They don't want me in their house. Maybe they'll growl at me, but I can't take it personal. I can't look at it like when a person flips you off or something, and even that you can't take personal. I think as you get older too, you start to see that the things that used to get you upset really aren't worth getting upset about. As time goes on and you deal with it more and more. I have to admit, the first time a dog ever growled at me, I was like, whoa. But as time goes on, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, get it out of your system, whatever. So I don't really take it personal. I just figure I'm going to work around it, kind of like dynamite. I mentioned that in my book. It's kind of like, you just kind of, you can't just rush in there and start moving stuff around. You got to just kind of work your way around until you can get close enough to.
Yeah, I want to interject one thing. I don't want to throw you off course. I just want to say something because you just made me think of something. We've had people who've commented that they've read Robert's grandfather's books on training, so they don't need to read Robert's books. Well, his grandfather never wrote any books. Those are ghost written, and they're not as detailed. And I'll tell you, as a person who's seen all of the stuff that was written before, it's not equivalent to what Robert wrote in his book. So I just want to throw that in there because when he mentions his book, it's more comprehensive, goes into more detail than any of the previous books do. So I just want to throw that in there.
Right. It's more designed. My book is more designed to teach you the understanding of the mentality of the dog, as opposed to teaching tricks or teaching a general behavior. That is in my book, but that's not really what my book was about. And that's we talked in the past about the triangle that my dad used to tell me about with dogs. When you push dogs too far, you corner them. They only have three ways they can react. They can try to get the heck out of there. They can fight you back, or they can just cower and let you beat them to oblivion. You're going to find out what kind of dog that is. But my dad always loved the dog that fought back. Those were the only kind of dogs he really liked, because he knew that it was a partnership. He was going to last longer. He was going to be more resilient because he fought back. So people, when trainers look at individuality and independence in a dog, you should look at it as an asset and try to groom it appropriately, as opposed to try to fight it. That's who the dog is. And you can't try to change a leopard's spots any more than you can change the way a dog behaves. Their individuality is something you want to foster, not squelch. And a lot of trainers really take that as a personal insult. And then we talk about the tools. We're using tools to. I've seen trainers who will smack a dog from behind when they show aggression. I've seen that, where they'll use a leather strap or something and just smack them on the butt if they growl at another dog, say in a group situation or something. I've seen that. But see, the dog doesn't see it. See, the dog only feels it. There's a big difference. Now, when you're hitting a dog in the face, I mean, this is like, this is a life-changing moment. It's something that they'll probably never recover from mentally, and they'll always be wondering if the next guy is going to do the same thing. So you really have to think about the long-term effects of challenging a dog, and we really shouldn't be looking at a dog, their persistence and their stubbornness can be turned into something we can use. Just like when my grandfather had that original Lassie, and Lassie come home and he chased motorcycles, and my grandfather really couldn't fix it. And then he thought, you know what? maybe I can use that for something. And he did. He used it to get Lassie to do escape scenes. So whenever he had to escape, they just revved a motorcycle around the corner, and it made Lassie crazy. It made him want to just get out and get that motorcycle. So, you can find things that a dog does. You never want to take away something that you could use later, a facet of their personality. The problem I had with Betty is she was the cowering dog. She was the dog who would take any amount of abuse. If she were working with this Chinese trainer, she would have died.
Yeah.
Because she would have taken it. She would not have fought back. You can destroy those two types of dogs, and you can make a dog that's independent just flat out mean, right? That's why people get pit bulls, and they do the same thing. The people who buy pit bulls, they're not Albert Einstein. There are a lot of them. They're getting dogs, and they want a weapon. They don't want to bring it in the house and show it love and let it hang out with the cats and learn about how to deal with other animals. They just put them out, isolate them, and throw them a bowl of food once in a while, and make them scare all the neighbors away. And I just think that's not what dogs were put here for. If your dog doesn't come in the house, there must be a pretty good reason why you don't do that. I can't think of one myself. It's a partnership. It's not me over you. I hear Cesar Millan talk a lot about the alpha. I'm the alpha. I'm the alpha. And it gets kind of old hearing it all the time. I feel like, well, why do I have to be the alpha? You can be the alpha over these other dogs, right? But me, like he's the Jedi Master, right? I'm not an alpha. I'm above the alpha. And I don't look at myself as needing to prove that I'm the alpha all the time, because I'm not becoming the omega. There's nothing going to push me to the back. I'm always going to be in front. I know that. The dogs know that. And I don't have to prove it by using force and confrontation in my training. I try to avoid confrontation. If I see that a dog is not responding properly, I'm going to have to try to get them out of themselves before I can slow them back down. You can't, you just have to read the dog. Yeah. Some dogs need a little bit more to bring them out of themselves, and other dogs need to be brought back. But rein back slowly. We're not slamming on the brakes. We're just tapping the brakes.
Yeah. Let me throw something in there that maybe, because you brought it up, sort of. And okay, the Jedi Dog Master thing. I didn't name myself. Some of my students did, and the reason why is what Robert's getting to. But maybe this will make it really easy to understand. Do you remember the scene in the very first movie came out in '77, Star Wars, where Obi-Wan Kenobi is with Luke Skywalker, and they're in that speeder or whatever they called it, and they're coming up to the Imperial stormtroopers, and it's a checkpoint. Instead of a physical clash that would attract everybody, and he's like, we don't need to pass this, let us pass, right? He's doing the Jedi mind trick is what they call it. But this is on a higher level, and that's what Robert's talking about. We don't have to physically do it because we're mentally or emotionally structuring it. We're up a few levels anyway. People go watch the movie again because that part I'm playing it in my head right now. So anyway, okay, Robert.
The tools too. I mean, we don't want in my training. A big part of my training is to get the tools off the dog. Right? Isn't that right? I mean, you train the same way. Our goal isn't to keep the electronic collar on if we're using that. Keep that on forever. The goal is to get rid of it as soon as we can. But still make the dog believe that the same rules apply, even though the collar is no longer on it. So the whole idea is to make the tools invisible. You're not making a big issue out of it. Why do you think I use a 50-foot leash? So I don't have to change the tools all the time. Because I don't want the dog to say, oh, now we're going to do something here because he did this. Because, we have patterns. Your dogs read the patterns, and, you don't want to give them anything that's going to tell them what you're about to do. I talk about that poker game all the time in my book. And if you're showing your hand to your dog, and if you're showing aggression to your dog, they're going to show aggression back to you. If you have any kind of dog in front of you that's not going to fold up like a cheap suit, if it's a dog that has a backbone, you're either going to ruin him or you're going to make him the kind of dog he never should have been. What do I say in the beginning of my book? I say, watching my dad and my grandfather was like watching a magic show. But it wasn't the training that made them great trainers. It was that they made great dogs. And you're not going to make a great dog by beating them and having confrontations with your dog. where you're using more of the Jedi mind trick, where you're, these aren't the droids that you're looking for, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's like
right there, right
like,
there.
It's just so simple, and he just passes by. Doesn't even. And you notice too that he doesn't bend over or swing his arms or anything.
Yeah.
He moves very smoothly, almost like he's gliding across the floor, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about in dog training. It's making it almost like you don't need to be there at a certain point. You're not there to be there forever. You're there to be 150 feet away down the road, or 200 feet away down the road, not in the space of the dog forever. You want to get out of that space, put the dog in a separate space. That's when you start to discover distance and what the things you can do when you have a dog doing A to B, but having them do all these other things in between, not just coming to you, but picking up something and bringing it to you, or picking it up something and putting it into a basket, and then going over here and doing that. But you can't do that if you're only 3 feet away from your dog. So that's why I use the long leash, because movie trainers use long leashes. I seldom see obedience trainers doing that, but I always saw movie trainers using long lines, agility trainers as well, because they had to get a motion and fluidity in the movements that the dog was making. And you can't get that by dominating your dog in a small space.
Well, yeah. Well, we're as always, we're the tangent guys, but these are profound tangents, and I'll get Robert back on the part that he originally wanted to talk about, but I just want to say yes, and we're giving out secrets. I mean, you're giving away stuff. I will say that other people who do use a long line in the very beginning are bird dog trainers. It really comes from them. They're actually, well, no, I'm not gonna give away a bunch of stuff. All right, I'm not gonna do that. Consults, and we will be, as we get more and more people. People have asked us to talk about. I'm throwing things in. Okay, yeah, I'm not sticking to this. We don't have a script, so I can't stick to it. Anyway, people have asked us to talk about Lassie stories, all the different Lassies, and Rin Tin Tin stories. And for someone who's still alive, I think I know more than anybody else about Rin Tin Tin 1 through 3. And we will do that, but not now. People, we're gonna, we have plans for that, but not now. But I just want to say that going on these things, giving a lot of details, a lot of secrets away on how we do things that other people are not able to do. So if you want to have a dog that does what we can do, like obviously if we can have dogs do switch limping and do going on a bridge thing, which is leading to a bigger thing, and he's already ready. The monster bulldog's already ready to do something. I'm going to film pretty soon, like tomorrow maybe. So watch for that. And doing things that other people will do with a Malinois. The point is, if we can do that, we can easily teach your dog to sit down, stay, boundaries. All these things that you want are fairly easy for us to train. So, and that's what we want to show you, that if we can do these complex, more difficult things that other people are not able to do. If I can do a quarter-mile recall and sit stay, obviously we can do the 20-foot ones that most people struggle with. So that being said, Robert, I think you wanted to talk about a movie called Heaven's Gate, right?
Yeah, because I remember back in the 70s and late 60s, we did a lot of Westerns. We had, my grandfather did Hondo with a dog named Sam. And then my dad did Big Jake with Laddie and Silver. And those were, every John Wayne movie had a Weatherwax dog in it, as long as John Wayne was alive. And my grandfather was great friends with John Wayne. And I remember my dad used to talk a lot about Westerns. He was a big fan of Westerns. And of course, that was because my grandfather was and his father was. And, my great-grandfather was a trick rider in the Wild Bill Hickok Rodeo. That was Rudd's father. Westerns were always a big topic of conversation. They say that disco died when the 80s came, but so did the Western as we know it. And I believe there were a couple movies that came up after that, like Silverado and a few little Westerns, Young Guns, but they weren't really the traditional Western to me. They were kind of like pop Western and, Bad Girls. And there was a lot of little movies that spun off, but they weren't the traditional Western that I grew up watching, the Clint Eastwood type movies and the John Wayne movies. But Heaven's Gate probably was the reason, probably because of the attention that it got. And you'll see it online if you ever look it up. It came out in 1980. It starred Chris Christopherson, and it was I forget what year it was set in, but it was, there were not only, cockfights, they had cockfights. I think they dismembered a couple chickens in the movie. They used tripwires and broke the legs of horses. And of course, I've even heard rumors of the horse being sold, the meat being sold, dog food companies, which used horse meat back in the old days in the canned food. That's neither here nor there. I can't really confirm those reports, but I will tell you that there were a lot of animals that were abused. And keep in mind, we didn't have the special effects that we have now. So a lot of times if you saw an animal blow up, they really blew up. Right? It wasn't a trick made in CGI. Obviously, we have to protect. We have dummies that we could use. There's obviously ways we could move around. But some trainers, took shortcuts. We know they did. I've heard of, trainers using cattle prods on dogs. Not just livestock. But it's just the expendability factor that some trainers had in the old days that, they weren't really attached to their animals. And I think in my era, the trainers I worked with, they cared about their animals. That's why I worked for them. But there were other people out there who didn't treat their animals so great. And I think as time has gone on, become a more humane industry, and there's a lot of quality trainers that are still in the industry. There's not as many quality trainers, and I think that with the advent of technology, we're seeing it easier and easier to eliminate the need for actual dog trainers. We've already seen that happen with wild animals, with chimpanzees, all the incidents that have happened with chimps, other wild animals that they just decided, maybe we just won't use them anymore. And that's kind of what's going to happen to dogs. My dad always said to me, he said, pretty soon, Robbie, they won't need real dogs. And he said this back in the 70s. There's still some good movies that can be done with real dogs,
We're willing to do it. We're willing to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my great uncle did the original Call of the Wild, but the one that I saw a few years ago back with Harrison Ford wasn't quite of the same caliber because they relied too much on technology and not enough on the dog work.
Yeah, tangent again. But I just bringing this up because you're talking about 70s movies. A very 70s movie, Sounder, and that was Frank Weatherwax. You want to just throw something in there about that?
I'm trying to think of that movie, Sounder.
See, so,
I know he did it, but I don't remember.
Cicely Tyson. It was the black sharecropper family.
Okay, so what kind of dog was in that movie?
Yeah, it's like sort of like Spike, right?
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, it probably was a descendant of Spike then.
Yeah. But I was just bringing that up because the reason I brought that up is because all of that is a real dog. Everything you're going to see in there is a real dog, and it is another great dog trader who a lot of people are probably not exposed to or don't know. They don't know about Frank. So I just brought that. I just want to say that, and you can find that movie. There's no high qualities like copies left or something. You know what I mean? So they're all kind of like bad VHS quality at this point, but it still exists, and you can watch it because we watch dog movies. I do a bunch for the dog work. And some have good plots, and
I think I've seen Sounder when I was a kid, so I didn't really remember what dog was in it. But I know Frank did it. Frank had enormous amount of credits and actually took about a huge part in the training of the original Lassie, because he was my grandfather's right hand man. He ran the business when my grandfather was doing Lassie. Frank was managing the business. All the other dogs.
Well, I throw that in there too, people, because I don't want it to, I don't want everyone to be so angry the whole way through our vidcast because the beginning and watching it again. But you should be angry. You need to be angry, really. You need to be angry because it motivates people. That's one good thing. Is if you're angry, you'll do things. You'll stay away from anybody who would do something like that. And anyway, but this is something, and that's something that Robert's bringing up with Heaven's Gate, is that the outcry from the movie when it got out changed the industry, right, Robert?
Yeah, it's a lot like what we talked about last week, where some bad news about dog training will make producers either go to another company to handle the dogs, as they did with the Dog's Way Home, and then they had a sequel. That wasn't done by the same company because of the publicity that arose from the movie. And I know there was a lot of Asian actors in the movie too. So, and there's a different attitude. Keep in mind too that in Asia, because we started with the whole China thing, Chinese don't look at dogs the same way.
Oh yeah. No.
A lot of it's cultural, right?
Yeah.
I remember Japan. It was different in Japan. Japan, they loved their dogs. They didn't understand their dogs very well, but they cherished them. But in Korea, we know what happens to dogs in Korea.
In China too. I have some personal stories that I can add, but I don't want to sidetrack you. So
yeah, I know. We used to get these pictures from the International Federation of Animal Welfare, IFAW, and they used to show these horrific pictures of dogs being tortured for the restaurant business in Korea, and it's barbaric. I've trained a lot of dogs that were saved from countries like South Korea and China and
Vietnam.
Exactly. I've never been to Taiwan. I don't know if that's any different in Taiwan, but some of the countries like the Philippines I've been to. Now they're not really cruel to dogs, but they just don't.
They don't care.
They just don't care. Yeah, they're indifferent.
Yeah.
But they're not out there, hunting them down.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just depends on where you are, and even within a country, like within China, I'm sure there's parts of China that are much different than other parts.
Well, okay, I'm not going to delve into this. I'm just going to say to people, I spent 17 years in Southeast Asia, and I had run-ins with, my jungle dog. He survived. He's an incredible dog. Any of these, I want to get a female jungle dog because I want him to have a kid. So anyway, but the point is that he survived a lot of things, and one of the things he survived were meat hunting gangs of scumbags because the Thais don't eat dogs. They're not opposed to selling the dog Chinese because there's a lot of Chinese. If you know the history about Thailand, there's a huge amount of Chinese that came into Thailand and blah blah blah, and in Cambodia, same thing. And for legal purposes, I cannot discuss some of the things that happen with the run-ins and stuff. But some people won't make a stand. I'm not one of those people. I will make it, and I have. So I'll leave it at that. But I don't betray dogs. That's where I'll put it. Okay. Anyway, back to you, Robert.
Circling back to the whole deal about where we started, about the relationship with your dog and its partnership. I mentioned that in my book, that you do something for me and I'll do something for you. I wash your hand, you wash mine. So it's a two in my paw. I'll wash your paw, you wash mine. Right? Because I spent a good part of my life crawling, around imitating the dogs when I already knew how to walk. It's just you have to see things from the eyes of a dog. I mean, you have to have a little compassion too, because these aren't stupid animals. These aren't chickens. Okay, I don't think chickens really know what's going on ever, right? Not really. But dogs and even pigs, they have they're smart. They understand things. And Frank Inn once said, he said, never tell a secret to a pig because they'll squeal on you every time.
Well, we're gonna get bad posts about that one. I don't know about that one, but anyway, people, yeah, I'm glad you stuck around to the end. Because we'll leave it on Robert's stand up because I had that was Gilgamesh. You saw he's a great dog. Now I got two other dogs over here and here comes she's pretty big. This is my Malinois German Shepherd mix. She thinks she's a Chihuahua. And so now she wants to be in my lap because she saw the other dog. Yeah. And she wants to. Yeah. She's very athletic. This is a super athletic dog. She goes crazy about squirrels. So, she will actually climb a tree as much as she can. She's jumped up like 8 feet onto a limb, and I have to go out and get her off the limb. But anyway, people, there it is. Another incredible episode with the last of the legendary Lassie trainers, Robert Weatherwax, and the Jedi Dog Master.